Hello everybody and welcome back to another Pokémon Emerald video. Today I will be using one Pokémon from the first generation. Hitmonlee is somewhat famous, especially because it is inspired by the real-life martial artist Bruce Lee, if anybody did not know about that factoid. The rules are still going to be the same ones. I can only use my starter in combat. I can't use items from my bag in battle. I can't raise my evasion in any way. And I can't use cheats or glitches. Fighting types have never been my favorite. Their moves are somewhat lackluster. Many of them are decent in terms of power, but have low accuracy or have weird caveats. Hitmonlee starts off with double kick, which is a good move, and revenge, which is also good, but it somewhat requires you to get hit first. Even if I have an attack lowering nature, the first few fights in the game are going to be very easy, especially the ones against the Puchienas, because this time around I do not have to waste multiple hours grinding, but I can instead destroy them with any fighting move. Along the way, Hitmonlee also learned Meditate, which is a good move. It raises your attack by one stage, so it's essentially worse bulk up, but for now it will be fine. I don't think it will be needed for the first fight against Roxanne, because fighting is super effective on rock, and so this gym is going to be quite easy. Also, I resist rock, so yeah, there is little they can do to stop me. She tries to stall with multiple potions, but eventually I can break through her wall too. Moving on, we can go to the cave where Pico is held hostage, and of course the Team Aqua Grant here also has a Puchiena, so today I will include this bit just to get revenge on that Pokemon. After that and a couple other things are done too, we are about ready to leave town and move on, but before we can do so, we have to take on the optional fight against our rival. May's team here is kinda scary, because Torkoal is a very strong Pokemon for this point in the game. It has a lot of defense, so my physical attacks are not very effective, and also it knows Curse, which increases both his defense, making him even more tanky, but also his attack. Fortunately, I can defeat it before it can seriously go on the offensive, and from there, the starter is quite easy. After defeating her, we can make our way to Brawly. He specializes in fighting types, so maybe today he can learn a thing or two from us. I started off by setting up a couple of Meditites, and Machop did the same with Bulk Up. Unfortunately for him, my attack is a lot higher than his, and so I can sweep his team with a Brick Break, which is also an extremely strong move, at least for this point in the game. Now that we have this badge too, we can get to Slateport, our next destination, where we find a scientist being harassed by a couple Team Aqua Grants. They are not particularly strong, but one of them exposes the biggest weakness of Hitmonlee so far. Since I have only fighting moves, I cannot deal much damage to Zubat, since it doubly resists them. Hopefully that will be fixed later when I will get a couple normal moves. In the meantime, let's hope it does not come up too often. Anyway, after dealing with those guys, I had to grind a bit more, and then we have the next fight against May. For her, I took the time to overwrite Meditate with Bulk Up, since the latter is strictly better, since it also increases my physical defense, which will hopefully be very useful. Once we have defeated our rival, we can make our way into Mobile, and here we can grind a bunch more against the trainers around the town. And once I am ready, I can challenge the gym leader Wattson. His Pokémons are not too strong, especially because this time around I do not have to worry about Magneton. I can set up a few times against his Electrike, because it also loves to set up with Howl. And once my attack is very high, I can sweep the rest of his team to earn the third badge. With this one in our pockets, we can keep moving on with the story, and eventually we arrive at Meterfall Caves. After having a bit of a chat with Archie, we are informed about Max's plan, and so we climb the volcano to stop him. Of course, since this is a video game, the only way to resolve this conflict is with even more violence. The fight against Maxi is not particularly hard, because even with Intimidate, my attack is still pretty good, and by this point I have already fixed the weakness to Zubat. The only thing that takes a little bit of time is the Camerupt, since it is quite bulky, but eventually it goes down too. Next up is the fight against the Fire Gym Leader Flannery. I am not super worried about this one. Hitmonlee has a very high special defense that I am always surprised to see. I would not expect a Pokémon like this to have way over 100 base special defense. I can use that in my favor and set up, but then Slugma uses Sunny Day. It's not great, since Overheat will now deal a lot more damage, but I am still able to survive it, giving me enough turns to take down her ace without the need of any resets. After defeating this gym fight, we have to backtrack and take on the next one against our dad. Norman is generally very scary because his Pokémons are quite tanky and can do a lot of damage, but today, since I have good moves and the type advantage, this fight should be quite easy for us. I was still not sure if one hit would defeat Slacking, so I took the time to set up once, and then I'll be sure to one-shot it. Once his team falls to our kicks too, we are given the Surf HM, and with that we can go explore the rest of the region. Eventually we stumble upon more Team Aquagrants in the Weather Institute, and since we are a good Samaritan, we go and defeat them to free the scientist guys. Shelly is not really a problem as usual, her Pokémons are very frail, especially to fighting moves. Next is the not so optional fight against May, and while her team has improved quite a bit, while my moveset is somewhat the same, it is still an easy fight as I am very overleveled compared to her Pokémons. So, after sweeping through her, we have to go challenge the gym leader in the next town. Winona is the first one that actually gives me some trouble and manages to defeat me. Her team is flying types, which is not very good for me since I am weak to them, and every single one of her Pokémons has at least one flying move. Also, Skarmory is a... The strategy here was to set up more with Bulk Up, because flying types are considered physical in this generation, and so Bulk Up helps with that too. Once I implement this strategy in the second attempt, it goes by way smoother, especially because I can one-shot Altaria and get rid of the biggest problem. After getting through the first troublesome gym leader, it's time to do something a bit easier and challenge May for the last time in front of them all. Much like our previous encounter with her, her team is not too bad against us, but between the bulk up stats and my way higher level, there is very little she can do to stop me. So I can just set up in her face and then proceed to sweep her entire team with the secret power. Not very exciting, but she rarely is, at least in this encounter. Moving on, we have to go to the Pokémon Cemetery, where after speaking with this old lady we receive the magma emblem. Now that we have this key item, we can enter the hidden cave where Groudon is, and as we arrive, we see Maxi using the wrong orb to awaken the legendary. He also defeats me, and that is in a large part because of Crobat. He managed to confuse me and then I hit myself a bunch, and while I was doing that he was spamming Air Cutter on me, and so my HP went down very fast. Much like with Winona, the solution is to bulk up more, and with all of the extra attack I can one-shot the bot to get rid of those problems. Now it's time to do the same against the Team Aqua, but here we are only able to challenge one of their admirals. Fortunately, this one is quite a bit simpler, especially because he uses Swagger on me, allowing me to skip a couple of steps. This could be bad if I hit myself a bunch, but since Hitmonlee snaps out immediately, it was very easy. But unfortunately I cannot say the same thing about our next fight. Tate and Liza are a huge problem. They specialize in psychic types, which are super effective on me, and even though I have great special defense, they still hurt a lot. Also, my moveset is not exactly the best to deal with this team. I don't have any super effective moves, and so I have to rely on my physical attacks. After some testing, I found out that if I use bulk up too many times, that would trigger Claydol to switch to Psychic. Instead, by limiting the uses of the setup move, I can get enough attack to defeat the remaining Pokémons, while he spams Earthquake, which I can tank thanks to the extra defense. Near the end, we have the usual shenanigans with potions, but I can break through that too. It took a few attempts, but at least we are through this. Once we are done with this fight, we have to go do the other double fight of the island and help Steven take down the leadership of Team Magma. Their Pokémons are not exactly very powerful, but because of the multiple Intimidate, my attack is not going to be very high. Thankfully, I can fix that by using Bulk Up, and since pretty much all of their offensive moves are physical, that should help out a great deal with my survivability too. After gaining a bit more attack, I can go on the offensive again and take down their Pokémons somewhat easily. I say somewhat because of course I end up misclicking a couple of times and using fighting moves against the Zubat line, which obviously do very little damage. At least I am not alone in this one, and so Metang can help me defeat them with the Psychic. Eventually we can KO all of their Pokémons, and once we have done that, as a thanks, Steven gives us the Dive HM, and since we just got the badge for it, we can use it immediately to reach the seafloor cave, where we find Kyogre still asleep. Here we also find Archie, who defeats me. Damn you, Crobat! After losing so many times to that Pokémon, I sort of lost my patience and decided to use a substitute. It's not exactly very honorable, but whatever. Whatever gets the job done, I will do. Thanks to it, I can set up properly, and from there I can sweep the team, dodging a lot of issues. Of course, defeating him does not mean that we have solved anything, as the red orb activates and wakes up the legendary. To put an end to the fighting between Kyogre and Groudon, we have to go ask Rayquaza for help. And since the green giant lizard is such a nice soul, he obliges and makes the other two weather legendaries stop fighting immediately. Once we have saved the planet, we can take on the final gym. And this one should not be particularly challenging. I don't think any of their Pokémons have a super effective move on me, but just to be sure, I used Substitute in this one too, and then I found out that Attract goes through Substitute. That's a news for me. I have never had that interaction before. Anyway, even if infatuated, I was still able to set up a couple of times, and from there I can sweep the rest of his team. Fortunately, this fight was not particularly hard, and so we can move on without having to add anything to the reset counter. And since this one was the last gym in the game, we can now enter the victory road. Here we are immediately stopped and challenged by our secondary rival of the game, Wally. And to be honest, his team is not too bad against me. Especially the lead Altaria, since once again it has the type advantage and can do some serious damage with the flying moves. Fortunately, I can take it down before it can set up a bunch and then destroy me. From there, the rest of the team is quite a bit easier, since I can get rid of Magneton with the fighting moves, and the normal ones should be able to deal with everything else. After fighting through the rest of the cave, we can get to the league, where our first match is going to be against Sidney. I cannot dodge the initial Intimidate from my Tiena, but I can set up a substitute to ignore any further attempts to lower my stats. Unfortunately, my Tiena this time was a bit smart and used Double Edge quite often to break my substitute. Thankfully, it took a couple of turns, and so I had the time to set up Bulk Up to recover my attack and get it even higher. Between that and the type advantage I have against this guy, the fight was not that bad, and I can proceed to one-shot his Pokémons with a stab Brick Break. 1 down, 4 more to go, including the champion. Next is Phoebe, and I had to do some preparation for her. I swapped out Secret Power for Earthquake, because that's the only move I can use to defeat her Pokémons. Both fighting and normal ones are ignored by her ghost types. As usual, I used Substitute to block the curse from her lead Dusclops, and from there I set it up a bunch of times, because I kinda needed to one-shot everything, otherwise I risk running out of PPs for Earthquake, since I forgot to use a PP max on it. And so I only have 10 PPs for her 5 Pokémon, which usually is not bad, but since her 2 Dusclops have pressure, it's kinda tight. Overall, my plan works out, and I can defeat Phoebe without any further annoyances. Next up is Glacia, and she should be the easiest one of them all. I should be able to just set up once against her lead, as it uses Hail, and from there I can sweep her team with the Brick Break, because I have the type advantage. and her Pokémons are not exactly tanks. And even if I missed the one-hit KO on one of her Pokémons, like Walrein, I should still be able to survive a Surf or an Ice Beam, thanks to my good special defense. The only thing that could screw me over is a freeze, but none of that happens, so we are safely through her too. And now for maybe the most challenging fight, Drake and his dragons. This should be a hard fight, but Substitute somewhat trivializes it. I can set it up against Shelgon, and it will have a hard time breaking it since Rock Tomb is resisted. While he tries to do that, I can set up, and once I feel comfortable enough, I can go on the offensive. As you might have noticed, I overwrote Earthquake with Return, and that's the reason why I did not teach Return any earlier. Otherwise, I would be stuck fighting Drake with fighting moves, since many of his Pokémons are immune to ground attacks. And even though fighting is stab and I have a bunch of boosts, it would still be not exactly great. Anyway, time for the champion. Wallace is somewhat scary because his Pokémons are decently tanky, have good damage, and can often catch me off guard with Toxic, Leech Seed, and other stuff like that. Fortunately, I can employ the usual strategy of setup against Wailord after you lower his HP. Even though my substitutes do not last for long and my HP gets very low, I am still able to set up multiple times, and from here it should be smooth sailing. With all of this attack, I can click return over and over again, and I should be able to destroy his team. Fortunately for me, that is exactly what happens. I do not have any weird surprise, and once I can defeat the last of his Pokémons, Hitmonlee can finally be crowned champion of the Hoenn region. Not going to lie, Hitmonlee was very fast, but I sort of was hoping it would be a bit easier. Tate and Liza were a major wall that I did not see coming. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell, and all of that YouTube stuff. It helps out a great deal. If you have any comments, video ideas, feedback, or anything like that, leave it in the comments, and I'll see you next week. Bye!